Ah, yes, the mythical one-shot. Hey, Google, build me a billion-dollar SaaS unicorn to-do list app, please, but make it AI first. If only it were that easy. But the good news is that we are getting closer and closer every single day. And this new release of Claude Opus 4 with Claude Code is no exception. In fact, I'd wager a bet that it's the closest a single leap has ever felt for me when it comes to actually one-shotting something successfully. So in this video, I thought we'd see just how far we can get one-shotting an app. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take one planning prompt first, which we could argue, okay, well now it's not a one-shot. And then we're gonna feed that to Claude Code and see what it can do. But I really did want to do this with something that's not exactly a super trivial task, right? A basic to-do list task, a basic weather app that goes out and calls an open public API and just pulls in the weather. I didn't want to do something like that. I wanted to do something that to me at least felt a little bit more grounded in something I would want to build. And so that is what we are going to do. So first things first, we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about Claude Opus 4 and Claude Code, just for those of you out there that haven't actually heard of it yet. Then we are going to go through the prompt that I have, which is going to serve as the basis for all of this stuff. And then after that, we're just going to pass it straight into Claude Code and let the thing ride. Now, I will give this thing a little bit of grace with fixing broken things and giving a little bit of guidance along the way if it's gone slightly off the rails. But I really am going to try to just let this thing go by itself. So this video is going to be great for you if, number one, you're a beginner vibe coder, but you're a little bit more technically inclined than the average person, and you want to just jump straight into the juicy stuff. Number two, you're already vibing your way through life with tools like Cursor, and you want to potentially do it even better. Or number three, you're sick of the limitations of tools like Lovable and Replit, in their current state at least, and you want to make a jump into the world of actually looking at code. I'm a firm believer that planning goes a really, really, really long way with this stuff. So if you're really trying to learn this tech and use it to build something dope that you're really excited about and proud of, well, this process is going to rock your socks off. So let's get to it. Okay, so first things first, looking at Claude Opus. So how does Anthropic describe it? Hybrid reasoning model that pushes the frontier for coding and AI agents, featuring a 200,000 token context window. So if you're interested in learning about this, you can come and read this page. Two things I'm going to say real quick. First is on the pricing. I am subscribed to Claude Max. And so Opus 4 and Claude Code are included with your Max subscription. So when you use Claude Code, you have two options. Option number one is that you can just use API, like usage-based pricing. And number two is that you can just authenticate with your Claude account and get access to it automatically through your Max plan. Now, if we scroll down, we can see what the actual pricing in terms of like input and output tokens are. It is kind of expensive, but you will see why. It is a pretty powerful tool. So one of the things that it is exceptional with, obviously, is advanced coding. It is a leader on the software engineering benchmarks. Now, one of the things that is really impressive is it can take a plan and it can reason through that plan and just go to town coding for a very long time. I think I saw it quoted somewhere that it will just go for hours going through thousands of subtasks behind something. So overall, it is super powerful. Now, the reason that I bring this all up is that it is what powers Claude Code. And that is what we are going to be using in this example. We're going to be using Claude Code. So what you need to do in order to actually run this, first thing, you need to have Node.js installed on your computer, at least version 18. And then you just need to run this command in your terminal. So you would pop open your terminal just like this, and you would run this command. So we'll copy that just to show you guys. Come paste it in. And it's going to go and it's going to install that globally on your computer. Now, the thing that's going to make this a lot different from other tools that you're used to, like Windsurf or Cursor or definitely different than Lovable and tools like that, is that it's accessed via your terminal, okay? So it doesn't have some nice IDE that you would go into yourself. It is literally done through the terminal. So if I were to come in here, for example, and now that I have that installed globally on my computer, if I was to type in Claude, it is going to start running that on my computer. And so I could come through here and I could actually start asking it to run and code things, right? I could come in here and I could ask it to start coding things for me. Now, the problem with that is that we don't have a development environment, right? So it's going to be generating code, but what's it going to do with it? Where are we going to go to edit it and access it and do all of the stuff that we want to do? That is where Cursor is going to come into play. So I will show it running in Cursor in just a second, but right now we're going to go and we're going to look at those prompts I was talking about. Okay, so if you have followed my channel for a while, you know there's a lot of different iterations of these prompts that I've gone through, because as the tech gets bigger and better and can do more, I update these and I try new things, and occasionally, who would have thought, stumble upon better ways of doing things. So the first thing we have here is our prompt that generates for us a PRD. Now I'm just going to fill this thing out and paste it into a tool, and then we'll look at the output and kind of talk about it that way. Now, if you want any of these prompts I'm about to show you, by the way, you can get them for free below the video inside of my school group. So here's the thing. I, with this video, did not want to build some sort of like weather app that goes out and just queries an API and then says like, here's the weather. Look, it one-shotted a weather app or one-shotted a to-do app. I think it's fine to do that stuff, but that's not what I wanted to do, because I don't think that's a realistic scenario that someone would want to one-shot something. And so I want to give it something that's a little bit more grounded in the reality of something that I would want to build in the course of my day-to-day life. And so I was talking with a friend this morning, and I had this thought for having a place where I can actually house all of my prompts. I use a lot of different tools. I use Gemini, I use Claude, I use ChatGPT, I use different open source tools. A lot of different things, and I'm almost always just storing those in random Google Docs. And so I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool to have an app where you can actually just store all of the different prompts that you had? Because I'm kind of tired of just storing them in different note-taking apps. And so that is what I wanted to build in this case. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this template that we have, and then we're going to pop into our Claude in this case. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop open the one that I have already done. So I did this right before we got on this video, and then we can scroll up and look through it and talk about it. So again, this is the same exact template, just pasted over. Okay, so all I did was update this line right here. So what is it? A way for users to store the prompts they use in their day-to-day life. They can easily store the prompts and categorize them based on tools they're used with. Now, I have a lot of other thoughts around what I would realistically want this to be in the long term, and different ways that we could use tools like OpenAI to actually enhance prompts and do all these different types of things and allow people to share them, maybe turn it into a marketplace. I don't know, but I don't want to get into all of that right here because it's going to make it way too complicated. And so I just updated that and said, hey, here's the basic idea. And then we let it go. So let's now scroll down and look at what this looks like. So one of the reasons I like this version of doing the PRD, because again, I've done a lot of different versions of these things, is it actually breaks down specific goals of something like this, which most of the prompts that I've used don't actually do this. And now one of the reasons this is valuable is if we're starting to plan out like the infrastructure for something, we're going to want to make sure that the business goals are aligned with the tech that we're building. If this thing needs to go to 1 million users, probably going to be different than if it's going to have, 100 users ever in it. And so this is our first piece where it's just talking about like business goals broadly and what goals users would have inside of the app. Then we get into user stories. So how are people going to actually experience the app? And I think this is more of like how a product manager traditionally would think about building out features or thinking about an application, right? They're going to think through user stories. So we go through here, we get some user stories, and this is helpful again because it's bringing like a grounded context to what are some very specific use cases that people would have with the app. For example, a developer might want to store their code assistance prompts so they can quickly reference them later. Maybe they have different like cursor rule prompts that they use for specific languages or frameworks or whatever it might be. So a lot of different use cases, but they're pulling out the marketing manager, the software developer, and the content creator. Then we get into functional requirements, like what do you need to be able to do then in that app? And by the way, I'm using Claude Opus for this because I find that it reasons at a high level pretty well. So prompt management, obviously, create, edit, delete prompts, probably a rich text editor. That's okay. Duplicating to make variations on things, importing, exporting. So like basic CRUD operations for a prompt, being able to organize them, tag them, star frequently used things, searching through them, search and discovery through your different prompts. It had this idea in here for a browser extension, which I think is like kind of cool if you want to be able to like quickly use them across the web. Collaboration features to being able to share them with people and so on. And so then what we get into is what does the overall user experience look like based on those user stories and the functional requirements. Okay, so people need to be able to sign up, obviously. There should be some sort of like welcome wizard. Then people need to be able to create prompts, fill in details about those prompts, organize them, right? Do all of the different things. So this is this first major piece that we have. And so what you're about to realize is I think I actually lied in the beginning of the video because it's 2 prompts that we're going to use. So we have this first prompt, but this isn't like what I would say like detailed enough to, I wouldn't want to pass this directly to an AI in order to like write code for me. I want to get a little bit more detailed in terms of what we're going to be building. Now, one step you could add between this is to refine these features, right? Think through the features a little bit more, brainstorm new features, things like that. But after we have that, we can go in and we can build out our detailed specification doc. And so this is where we are going to, again, pass that PRD that we just made into the system, and then we're going to have it build out the technical side of this. So it breaks down the core concept, the key technical pieces of this app, the architecture. So what are the different pieces of tech that are going to be used at each stage? We're going to be using Next.js, Postgres for the database, Elasticsearch. It's going to be using S3 for file storage. It's going to be hosted on Vercel. If we do any sort of AI features in the future, we're going to just use Open API for that stuff. It goes through and plans out all of the models that we're going to have for the database. So the different users, prompts, categories, tags, collections, right? All the different database models we're going to need. High-level feature breakdown, and then some performance targets and a few other pieces. And then what it does is it goes through and it builds out the entire plan basically. And so it's going through from a high level and then goes down into the granular details. The one thing I've noticed about Claude Opus is even when you tell it not to, it just loves to write code. So it's actually going through and it is writing all of this code, right? So it's basically specifying how every single piece of this thing is going to run. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come through here and I just want to illustrate something to you guys real quick, because as we look at this, it's obviously, it looks like a ton of stuff, right? So we just scroll through this, scroll all the way down to the bottom. Knowledge base is doing like risk analysis. We go all the way down to the very, very, very bottom, right? And so if we were to copy this, pop open our web browser, this is only 19,000 tokens, right? So that entire plan that we just looked at, 19,000 tokens. So that obviously is well within the range of what Claude Opus 4 can actually handle, right? It can handle that many tokens. So that entire plan that we just had, like very, very much so can be handled by the system. So we're going to copy that entire thing, and then we're going to pop over into our project. Okay, now really quick, I want to show you, because I've already, full disclosure, I started this project before I started recording the video so that it would be running in the background. And so I want to show you how we get this started, and I'm going to show you the exact process I went through. I am not skipping any steps. I'm going to show you exactly what was going on, issues I ran into at certain points in time, the whole thing. But if you want to get started with this, go into your cursor terminal, and like I showed you earlier, you're just going to type in the command Claude, okay? And it is going to pop you up something that looks like this. Then you're going to hit the backslash and you're going to type in IDE, okay? And then you're going to hit enter. And then you have this option to immediately hook in cursor, okay? We can immediately hook in cursor. You're going to hit enter there. And then after you hit enter, you're going to be brought to a box that looks just like this one where we can start typing into it. Now, if it's your first time connecting, you are going to have to go through and either connect your API key or click the button that you want to use your Claude Max account, and then it's going to pop you open into a single sign-on. You sign into Anthropic, and then you're back here in the system, and you are good to go. All right, so I'm going to show you exactly what we want to do to get this started. So we're going to go up. We're going to say we want to run a new terminal. Okay, we're going to come in, Claude. Proceed. We're going to say we trust it. We're going to connect it to the IDE cursor. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that plan that we had from here. I'm going to copy that. All I did was a Command C. And then we come over, and it should take a while to paste in this text because we're pasting in, again, like 19,000 tokens or so. And so, okay, pasted in all those lines. Then we're going to hit go. And you'll notice that it was kind of truncated. And then if we go back, we can actually see all of the stuff that was actually pasted in. One issue, though, with Claude, seemingly, is that it kind of chops off the terminal, so we can't see everything that was pasted in with this big of a command. Even if I try to minimize the screen, it doesn't really do anything, right? So that's the one thing you guys just need to be aware of when you're looking at my stuff, at least here. So basically what this thing does is it's going to go through, it's going to read everything we have, and then it creates its to-do list. So it wants to initialize a Next.js project. It wants to set up the project structure with the directories. Okay, makes sense. Wants to configure all the different tech that we gave it. So we gave it a specific tech stack recommendation. Create environment variables, cool. Set up Prisma with the initial models, and then configure ESLint. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that it is not... this to-do list isn't going to actually make that functional app, right? If we think of like what our document actually looked like, I mean, we're talking about how to build out entire features in here. And this plan that it has made is not going to actually get us there, but it's going to get us pretty far, most likely. And so all you need to do when you want to come through here and start actually running things is you have three options. Number one, you can just say, yes, I want to run whatever you're asking me to run right now. Number two, we can say, yes, and don't ask me ever for this command ever again. You can just run it. And then number three is we can say, hey, I don't actually want you to do that right now. And now all you need to do is hit yes, and it is going to go, and it is going to start actually running all of these commands, auto-accepting anything that pops out in the terminal. And then again, it's just going to keep asking us at certain points in time if we want to do something specific, but we can already see this thing is starting to roll. So I'm going to let this go for a little bit, and then I'm going to come back at certain points in time just to show you guys what it is doing. But again, we can see it is moving through the list that it has, and it's just taking those actions, right? I'm not actually doing anything, right? I'm not doing anything. It's saying, hey, am I allowed to create all these directories? And so I would say, like, I don't care about any, if you want to run a make directory command, then go do it. And so I'm going to say, hey, anytime you need to make a directory, just go do it. You don't have to ask me for that. If it's something that's more sensitive, that's obviously a point where I'm going to say, like, hey, maybe I want to actually check in anytime you want to run something like this. But for npm install campaigns for this one, I'm just going to approve it one time. And then we're just going to let this thing again go through, and then we will see where we land. All right, guys, so this thing fully went through. It probably ran for, I would say, 30 to 45 minutes, and it did generate us a something, right? So something came out of this, our personal AI prompt manager, and it has this little login section right here, everything you need to manage prompts. This is obviously a very ugly landing page, but they at least made this for us with a sign in and a get started button. Now, the one issue that I had was that I want to just run this thing locally. I don't want to go mess around with actually deploying this thing somewhere. And so some of these were not, it wasn't configured properly basically to run on my local environment. And so what I did was I said, hey, this is fine, but I need to be able to actually log in and register locally. And so I said that to it, and now it's gone through and it created a whole new to-do list, and it's going through and it is creating all of this stuff, right? So it's going through, it's creating the code, and it's moving through each piece as it needs to. And then once we get to the very end, it's saying that, hey, I basically did all of this. So it created basically a way to hash the passwords locally, since I'm never going to publish this thing anywhere, at least not in this current state. Made some updates to the forms, generated a next auth secret, adds a default AI tools to the database, creates a authenticated like login page, and then it gave a documentation on how to run this thing locally, right? And so then as I was going through, I continued to get a few errors and was just going back and forth, pasting the errors through. And then eventually we got to a point where we could actually register. And so if I click on this register now, here we go. I could say, Sean, test. Okay, now I can log in. And we land on a basic dashboard. Now, here is where we get into, at least in my experience so far, what is this tool really good at, and like where should you actually think about using it strategically. None of these buttons on the screen actually do anything, right? So nothing is actually hooked up, okay? So if we go back again to our prompt that we had, we gave it all of these detailed technical specifications about every single feature, right? Here's all of the prompt management features. Here's how it should be implemented. Here's what needs to happen. A user clicks a new prompt, a modal opens, they do this, they do that, they do that, they do that. All of those sorts of things. Here's how they organize things. It didn't actually do any of this, okay? It didn't do any of this. It did parts of this, right? It created part of the tech stack and created me a basic Next.js app where I could log in and do what I needed to do. But it definitely did not take it to the point where this thing would be a functioning app straight out of the gate. And so I think that's fine, just you need to know how to use these things. And so the next step in that process is that I came through and I pasted in this prompt. And so what I did was I just took that first user story that we had right here, from implementation approach all the way down to right here, and I just pasted that in, and it created an updated to-do list, right? So what is it going to do, right? So it went through and it created its to-do list. So it needs to create the API routes. It needs to build the rich text editor, needs to do a few other things. And now it has just gone through and it is implementing each piece of this. And again, this is entirely hands off. I'm not really touching anything. And now we just got to this point where it is completely done. So let's see how it functions, and let's see what the next step of this process actually would be. So after we can create, we should be able to organize, okay? We should be able to organize things. So we should be able to add tags and do stuff like that. So let's go in and see what it looks like. So now we're here, we refresh the page, create prompt, okay? Oh, cool. We could say this is like for Claude, general use. I don't know. Let's take one of my prompts I had here. Tags, coding. Okay, save prompt. Persists it. That's pretty cool. Okay. Let's me go in. Okay, editing's broken, which it's fine. Duplicating it does work. Okay, so there are some basic things that are working here. Let's see what our next step would be. So the next thing is that we're supposed to have categories, and if we click here, we can see we get 404. So the category doesn't work. So that will be the next piece. And so here is what I would do. We can pop back in here and we can say All right, we are going to build the organization section. So we're going to come through and we are going to do that. And then let's just also make the search work. So we'll go like that. And then we're going to come in here. We have our IDE right here, paste it in, and we're going to let it go. And again, I will unpause if there's any relevant points. So we can see as this thing's going again, it's generated its to-do list. So first it's going to create the category management page with all the nested categories. Pretty sweet. And so it's just going through and it is doing that, right? And it has some cool little things. I mean, they get cutesy with what they choose to call this. Sometimes it's shucking oysters, you know. They're making it fun for us. And then it's telling us how long it's taken and how many tokens it is taking to process this thing. So pretty cool. Again, it's just giving you updates as it goes. I have enough of these auto edits turned on that it's just kind of doing what it needs to do. But again, it's showing us the exact file. So it just created this route file for the category management. And yeah, it's just kind of jamming. So I will pause this and I will come back. And then one other thing that I want to do, and maybe I'll actually just talk about this right now, is that I'm not super thrilled on how it looks, okay? It looks like a basic Next.js app, right? You can just tell. And so I don't really like this. And so I'm going to try to just give it a design prompt and see what it does. So at the risk of not wanting to make this video super long, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to copy, and again, this is from another video. This is from my 4-part vibe planning stuff. I'm going to take this, which is like aesthetic guidelines for how apps should look. And so I'm going to come into Claude and I'm going to paste, I'll paste that in there. And then I'm going to come through and I'm going to take this. So I'm going to actually just borrow a style guide from a different app entirely. Oops. So I'm just going to take this and throw it in there. Spacing system, motion animation. Okay. And I'm going to just tell it, turn the above plus the below into a comprehensive style guide for this app. Okay, so the reason I'm doing this is, again, I think it's ugly in its current state, and so I want to kind of update that. So we're getting a pretty, we'll see what this output looks like, and then we will kind of tie everything up in a nice little bow. All right, guys, so this whole thing just ran through, just finished, and it looks like it is, to some extent at least, working. So we have this category tree error. So this is what I would do in this case with an error. I'm going to come back through. I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to let it fix it while we go to look at our other stuff. So we can see they updated this. We got categories. We've got tags. We can manage categories. Can't create a new category. Okay, so we got to wait for them to fix that bug. Okay, so it looks like it is seeming to be fixed. So we can name this like dev prompts maybe. That's pretty cool. It's like a category, color. Nice. Great category. Okay, so some errors still in the development process for sure. But here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go fix this thing. And then from there, I'm going to paste in that prompt that we got from right here. And I'm going to just say, update our app based on this. And I know that sounded very professional, but that's what we're going to do. So we're going to say, hey, go update the app based on this. And then we're going to see what it does. All right, so it fixed this little bug we were having there where this seems to work now, and you can collapse things and create subcategories and all that. So we're just going to go pop this last prompt we had in, and we are going to ask it to make these design changes. So I'm just going to paste that in, and I haven't actually used this for a straight design task, so this will be interesting to see how it handles it. So we will come back and see what this looks like. All right, and that took more time than I wanted it to, but it was pretty thorough apparently in what it went through and did. So if we were to go look, scroll all the way back up, it won't even let me go back up to where I gave that prompt initially, but it went through and it did all of this. Okay, so it updated a bunch of our styles. Let's go through and see what we've actually got. So here's the dashboard. Definitely popping a little bit more. I do like how they did the actual styling of the prompts, of the tags right there. Pretty nice. Dashboard, I mean, this is like a little bit jacked up, but I mean, I see what they tried to do there to make it a little bit more modern with these little, I don't know what you want to call them, things coming down from the side. If we go into our prompts, this is definitely reorganized a lot. Again, pops a lot more, feels a lot better. Test prompt, pick a tool out. So pretty nice in general. Search isn't working, but I don't feel like doing that right now. And the category page looks like it broke. But point being, it looks like it did a pretty decent job. So what are the takeaways of this experiment of ours? Claude Code and Claude Opus are pretty exceptional at getting the connection of things and the infrastructure correct out of the gate. What I mean is they're pretty good at making it work on some level, even with a fairly large prompt. That being said, in the context of one-shotting something, it seems to miss those granular details that are needed to actually complete the thing. Again, when you give it a 20,000 token prompt, it misses some of those details. But the thing is, that can all be filled in at a later date. So here's how I would think about improving this process. Number one, I would focus on doing the scaffolding of the thing first, meaning getting all of the technical infrastructure set up and connected. Build the actual file structure, set up all the different services, set up the environment files, make sure everything's connected. It can do that across the entire scope of your project pretty well. From there, I would worry about coloring in the details of building those actual features out. Second big thing I would do is I would focus on more of the design context earlier on. Meaning I would not wait until I already have something and then say, oh, well, here's actually my philosophy behind design. Now go fix everything so that it's more like this. I would think through those pieces in the beginning of that process. So all in all, huge step up in terms of what these things are capable, but I do still think these tools need to be leveraged in the context of a overall strategy where you're brainstorming what this app is really going to be about. You're making those high-level technical decisions. You're building out fairly detailed tech specification documentations, and then you are passing that all to the AI coding assistant to actually do the code generation and the task management. So for more involved things, I don't think it's quite a one-shot type of scenario yet. That being said, for really contained, super specific problems, I think it probably does a pretty good job at that. Again, if my prompt had been, hey, go build me an app that hits the weather API and then tells me a joke about the weather, it probably would have done that in one shot, no problem. I had a few different, somewhat involved things that were involved in this, doing the Prisma configuration, setting up the database, handling authentication, doing the Next.js setup. There were like a few different things actually going on in there. So I'm pretty impressed that it was able to go from start to finish and get all that hooked up in one go. But obviously there would be next steps to this process in terms of actually building out something meaningful. So that's it for this video. Again, if you want any of the prompts that I was showing earlier, they are inside of the free school group. That is it for this video. See you in the next one.